Dodge has revealed the Hornet, the production version. I made a redesign of this a couple of months back or so, trying to figure out what it could look like. And now we have the final production version here. So what we're gonna do in this video is talk about some of the spec and tech, and then of course we need to talk about this design. So the base model has 265 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque, which is enough for a 0 to 60 time in 6.5 seconds. Now the Hornet RT comes with 20 additional horses, but close to 100 more torques, bumping the power up to 285 horsepower and 383 pound-feet of torque, giving it the 0 to 60 miles per hour time in just 6.1 seconds. Now this has a 1.3 liter turbo engine in the front, and then you have an electric motor over the rear axle, so you have that instant torque. On the inside you find a 12.3 inch digital instrument cluster and a 10.3 inch infotainment system with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. Thing is, the base will start at under $30,000. So if we were to look at just the spec and the tech performance you get from the new Hornet, and for what price you're getting it for, I think it's a really good value. But that's not what we're focusing on here on this channel. We're focusing on the design. So what we're gonna do here is talk about the front, side, and the rear, and obviously I'm gonna compare it to what it actually is, and that is the Alfa Romeo Tonale. So we're gonna have a look at the designs and see what actually changed for the production version of the Hornet here. Up here we have the brand new 2023 Dodge Hornet. Down here we have the Alfa Romeo Tonale. Now the thing is, when so the Italian design philosophy and the American, specifically Dodge, the last kind of muscle car brand, the design languages of both these two brands are so different. So when you take an Alfa Romeo body and just smack a Dodge face on it, it's going to have a weird look to it, and that's exactly what happened here. I don't think this is a bad design at all, the Dodge, but it's definitely not a Dodge. That's the thing. Everything else except for the logos is an Alfa Romeo, and it is an Italian car. So I'm very confused by this design. However, looking at the front end, I do think it's a pretty decent looking design. We have a clear graphic in the front. It might look a little busy for my taste. I'm gonna make a quick redesign of this, showing how we can add more Dodge DNA into this design by cleaning it up, and specifically looking at the side view and this shoulder line that is very fluid, very rounded, and not Dodge at all. It's definitely Italian styling. Overall, the design and the proportions of this thing, comparing it to the Alfa, it suits the Alfa perfectly. I think the Alfa Tonale is one of the best looking small crossovers out right now. I love this front fascia, the sharp shoulder line right here in combination with the very fluid hood. As you can see right here, it looks almost like a calm ocean with all these soft surfacing that we have going on here. And I don't think this design language of the Alfa Romeo suits a Dodge. So let's have a look at the side view here. Comparing these two from a side view, you can barely tell a difference at all. Yes, we have a different logo here. We have a Hornet logo instead of the Alfa Romeo badging right here. We have different wheels, but that's about it. Even the front end headlights, they have the same cutout in the front end that we have on the Alfa Romeo Tonale. So I feel like maybe Dodge were a little lazy putting out this design, since they desperately needed to have a car in this category for sale. But I wish they put a little more effort into making it their own. Looking at the rear view, both of these cars are very beautiful looking, and that is, as I said, because it is designed by Italians, and it is an Alfa Romeo Tonale. I love the rear end of the Alfa Romeo. It looks beautiful. When I looked at the spy photos, the Hornet still had these 3 light dips, or 3 light design that we have in the Alfa Romeo, but I'm really glad that at least they changed that up for the Hornet. In the Hornet now, you can see, I think the rear end is a good difference between these two because they removed the logo, so at least they don't have a Dodge physical logo in the center. Instead, they have a light bar now that stretches all across the width of the car, from the very end of one point going up a little bit here, and then you have an illuminated Dodge logo in the center that is connected with this light bar going from side to side. So I think this rear end is really good looking. However, compare this rear end to all other Dodges that they have in the lineup right now, and you can see that there is clearly zero connection to any other model that they have. That's the only difference that they made in the rear end as well. You can see that the diffuser is exactly the same diffuser with a different finish to it. So in the Alfa Romeo we have a more of a glossy surface with this silver piece, trim piece going in here. In the Hornet we have a matte surfacing, but the tooling and the manufacturing is still the exact same part as we have on the Alfa Romeo, and we don't have this silver piece down here either. But other than that, the exact same car. One specific detail that we have in the side view that I forgot to mention is the greenhouse housing. So you can see that we have a rounded housing right here. This is very, very typical Italian styling and very typical Alfa Romeo, and it definitely doesn't suit a Dodge to have this type of styling. But as I said, they needed this car to be out of the market, so they decided to take the Alfa, rebrand it, make it into a Dodge. We also have this sharp shoulder line, but it has a curvature to it. If I were to design a Dodge, I would have the headlights sitting maybe a little higher and then have a more of a sharp, straight shoulder line going from one point of the taillight to the other, and also redesign this part to be more angular, and that's what I'm going to do in the redesign in just a minute. So looking at the interior, and the same thing here. I mean, there's it's the same story all across this, all around this car, even on the interior. It's essentially the same design as Alfa Romeo. We do have some differences, as you can see, with the air vents, for example, being rounded in the Alfa Romeo, a bit more squarish in the Dodge. We also have a different surfacing or treatment of this panel, the dash itself, from the Alfa Romeo. The Alfa has some two-tone right here, looks a little bit more upscale, I would say, than the base model for the Dodge Hornet. I'm not sure how the RT is going to look inside, but the steering wheel is exactly the same as the Alfa Romeo, the gauge cluster exactly the same, and the infotainment too as well. So with that said, let's jump into the redesign here. I'm just going to make a couple of small changes to this design. It's very hard to try to fix this or turning it into a Dodge when it's so fundamentally Italian in its overall styling. I think the biggest issue here is the combination of two different philosophies: the Italian design philosophy and the American muscle car philosophy. They just don't go together. So what I want to do here is try to make the shoulder line, first of all, more straight, more boxy, because this is a very round design, and I think the front end looks like it has a bit of an overbite to it. So I want to push out the lower part of the front end to have it be more of an underbite and more Dodge aggressiveness. I think the overbite look, it really suits the Alfa Romeo, but here it just doesn't work out. And then we have, for example, the side intakes in the front and lower part of the bumper. I want that to be in line with the big intake. I think it's a fake intake in this case. I don't see any opening, maybe a small slot of opening right there on the passenger side of the front end intake, but I want to have that in line with the side intakes as well, and that will bring out at least a bit more of this structure and squareness that I want to see from Dodge. And also this intake that you see underneath, there's a little slot that goes underneath the main grille in between the headlights. I want to remove that and just simplify that shape, have it be one intake going from the lower part in line with the lower part of the headlights, and then going down, dipping into the bumper and creating a one solid intake at the top and one solid intake in the bottom, and separate the two surfaces more, the two areas. So I want to have a clear separation between the top half of the front end and the lower half of the front end as well. And then, as I said, the greenhouse. This greenhouse needs to be more angular as well if you want to have it be a Dodge. I understand why Dodge did this, because they have the Durango. I think that's their only SUV that they have for sale right now. I could be wrong on that. But they needed to have a car in this segment, so a small crossover SUV. And since they're related to Alfa Romeo, I understand why they took the Tonale and created a design out of that. But at the same time, it definitely dilutes the brand identity of Dodge. Dodge to me is one of these, is the last company that still have very cool muscle car designs in a time when those type of designs and drive powertrains are going out in favor of hybrids and EVs. So this is completely opposite of what I would want to see from a small crossover from Dodge. As I said, the performance spec, the pricing, the value you get for in a Hornet is fantastic, but the design is just a letdown, at least in my opinion. Almost at the same time, same day that they released the Dodge Hornet, they decided to drop a Challenger convertible as well. So this convertible is brand new for 2023, I believe, and it will be built by a third party. So they partnered with another company to create these, but you can buy them at the dealership. And this is something that I thought, why didn't they do this earlier and take in this third-party company, or even Dodge themselves manufacture or produce a Challenger convertible? Because I think the design, the proportions of the Challenger, it's kind of made to be a convertible as well, and it looks really good. So they kind of balanced it out, the Hornet release with the Challenger convertible release, I guess. But overall, this is just another car, in my opinion, that is not gonna be something that you remember in 10, 15 years from now. It's just one of these cars to bring in revenue to the company. And as I said, I understand why they did it, but I am disappointed with the lack of effort into turning it into a proper Dodge.